Okay. Big day. Let's go get Gilbert. Yep. I got everything I need.
It's September 16th, 2021. Kelsey and I spent the night at a Best Western in Okeechobee, Florida. Neither of us slept great, given the anticipation. But we pack up and hit the road, heading toward Martin Correctional Institution.
Head east toward US 441 South, US 98 South.
Did you see that sign?
What?
Prayer is the best way to meet God. Trespassing is next.
Continue on Florida 710 East for 4 miles.
I think this is really beautiful out here, though.
Yeah.
It's been almost 3 years since we started working on this story, and today we will finally be meeting with Jeremy Scott. Driving to Martin Correctional Institution, we're in and out of cell service range. But every time service returns, my phone buzzes. I'm getting messages of support from everyone who knows where we're heading. One of the texts is from Chrissy. She offers a prediction about Jeremy's mood and disposition. I think he'll be sweet, she tells me. And as we drive, Kelsey and I are thinking about all of the people we've talked to over the past 3 years. People whose lives have been devastated by the violence and the grief at the heart of this story. And I'm thinking about the people who, despite that, or maybe because of that, urged us to keep going, to keep pushing and investigating. Like Jesse Somm, Michelle's brother.
I want you guys to find the truth. I mean, whatever and however long it takes, it'll just bring peace to me. You know what I mean? And I can leave this world knowing that at least it was solved. And I know for a fact what happened.
And we're thinking about Dan Odie, who was tried not once, but twice for the murder of cab driver Joseph LeVere, a murder Jeremy Scott seems to be responsible for.
I would love to just show everybody, no matter what you think, this is really who did it now.
Yeah.
Now y'all can rest your thoughts about me because I'm not that way, never been. That would be great.
All right. We're 10 minutes out. How are you feeling?
I feel really good about this. I feel like we've done all the preparation. We know so much. It's really just going to be about making him feel comfortable and just sort of establishing some kind of trust.
I mean, that's how you're feeling about how it's going to go. How are you feeling about the fact that we're finally sitting down with this person?
I don't know. It's like every day I just kept checking my email, but, now here it is, an hour away from meeting him, and we have none of those kind of emails saying that the trip's off, so I feel really good.
That's still all logistical stuff. We're sitting down with the person who killed Michelle, killed 3 other people, is, to some degree the reason Leo has spent the past 33 years in prison.
Yeah, I think that's probably the reason why I'm talking about logistical stuff, because, this is really painful when you think about it. All the people that we've met over the years whose lives have been damaged because of what Jeremy did, that's going to be the part that, it's in the back of your mind, but I try to I feel like I just want to focus on him and be sort of empathic to him so that he's in a talking mode. So I'm trying to put all that stuff in a compartment because it's just so painful.
That makes sense.
Your destination is on the left.
Okay, there's Bud. All right. Let me just go up there and take a look while I'm here.
Okay. Oh, it's just hitting me that we are not here to meet Leo. We are here to talk to Jeremy. Pulling up here and getting everything together, it kind of seems routine, as we've gone to see Leo so many times, but this is super different, actually. Getting a little nervous.
We've been preparing for this interview for the past 3 weeks, but we've been hoping it would happen for the past 3 years. And we've been fishing for advice from anyone who'd come to know Jeremy or who'd spoken to him in any capacity over the years. We spoke to private investigator Pat McKenna, Judge Scott Cupp, and Leo's current lawyers, Andrew Crawford and Seth Miller. They all think that the letters Jeremy's been writing to me are an indication that he's ready to open up. But it's Leo's advice that resonates with us the most. I talked to him on the phone before going in to see Jeremy.
The state has cast us as opponents in a chess game. Yeah, I'm not trying to play chess. I'm not trying to pin something on him. That's not my objective. We're out for truth, and he's the one that supplied the truth. But I would really like him to know and feel that myself and those who represent me are, concerned for his well-being as well. We want him to feel safe enough to tell the truth and not, have to cover things up.
It's almost exactly like Hardy. Same front doors and the bathrooms are right across the way. We arrive at Martin, and this place looks remarkably similar to Hardy CI, where Leo is housed, and where we'd gone through the security process half a dozen times. It's another giant concrete complex surrounded by tall fences and lots of barbed wire. We get to security, and the guards give us the personal body alarms, the little devices with the button we're supposed to press in an emergency. We loop it through our belts and hand over our IDs. The warden meets us and leads us to a room where the interview will take place. We don't know what to expect. We don't know if Jeremy will be shackled and cuffed, or if a guard will stay in the room with us. I'm not expecting Hannibal Lecter in a mask to be wheeled in, but I'm aware that Jeremy's attacked guards and nurses at various facilities across the state. He's known to act out in unpredictable ways. As the warden leaves, he tells us to be careful not to let the inmate touch the door, because there's a latch near the knob that, if flipped, would leave us locked in the room alone with him. I can't even tell if he's fucking with us.
He definitely wasn't fucking with us.
We sort of got the impression that they were just going to drop him off in the room, and that's when I got a little nervous, because I'm like, I'm responsible for Kelsey. He's going to be sitting in a room with Kelsey. I don't know how that's going to go. I got to try this one. We don't need the armrest, right? This one's better. There was 2 different kinds of chairs there. I'm like, all right, the one that locks him in a little bit better. And I was like, well, let's just put one with armrest on there. It'll just make it a little bit harder for him to jump over the table to get to us.
That's why you said that?
I'm just trying to think about this stuff.
It's situated like you.
I'll probably be exactly like this, like leading in, talking to him. Let's move this to the side. Yeah. Jeremy, thanks for coming. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. I'm going to probably, if he comes in, I'll get up and greet him and shake hands, and I think you should just stay seated. I'm nervous now.
Very nervous. We have our buttons. Hopefully work. Sure you don't need to use the bathroom?
Yeah, I'm positive.
Because you can't leave me alone in here with them. at
deal.
any point during
No, I'm not going to do it. Don't worry.
So, if you need to go now, go now.
Understood. It's gonna be sweet. It's gonna be sweet. Holy shit, he's coming. Hi, Jeremy. Bone Valley, Chapter 9, Coming Clean. Hi, Jeremy.
I'm going to be doing rounds of the
I'm
sheriff.
Gilbert King, the guy you've been writing with, and this is Kelsey.
Hey, Jeremy.
We figured if you would sit over here, and we can talk to you and sort of explain.
He's about 6 foot. He's pretty slender build, has blue eyes. And if you're comfortable with it, removing your mask would.
Yeah, we're fine with that too.
Yeah. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, it just made me when he got a shave and stuff.
Oh, don't worry, I didn't show you.
Yeah, they made me go get all this new clothes on and stuff just for y'all.
Are you kidding me? You know, he's a tall guy, and he's obviously can be imposing. And you know, when they brought him in, he was not cuffed. For some reason, I don't know. I never felt threatened by him. He did not strike me as someone who was going to be dangerous. And I think that was his body language. You know, shaking his hand, he just kind of just sort of disappeared into himself. It was a very loose handshake. You know, all his confidence and everything that he might have thought about himself as a young man is just gone. I felt sorry for him, really, physically looking at him. He just seemed like a shell of a man at this point.
Because they ain't nothing really can do for me.
Yeah.
I mean, my life here is what it is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you like Martin so far? Do you feel safer here?
Not really, but I guess I ain't gonna never feel safe in prison.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. One of the things Kelsey and I had discussed in preparation for this interview was the intention to follow Jeremy's lead. In everything we'd seen, Jeremy had been questioned by someone with a specific goal or agenda, a detective or lawyer who wants to get to the bottom of something, a prosecutor looking for a particular story. We wanted him to know that this would be different. Of course, we had things we wanted to find out and leads we'd be itching to follow, but we wanted Jeremy to be at ease. We wanted to give him the freedom to tell his story the way he wanted to tell it. We wanted him to know that we were interested in him and everything that entails. But that also means that sometimes, in the middle of talking about one thing, he might pivot. This happened pretty early in the interview. Jeremy casually mentions the taxicab driver as he's telling us about an interaction he had with his mother's boyfriend back in 1987.
he knew about the taxi cab driver because I told him if he ever touched my mom, I'll kill him. And I meant that, right? I'm just telling him straight up, right? I might have been a little drinking at that particular day, right? You know, and I kind of slipped. But apparently
We'd been hoping the taxi cab driver would come up in conversation. We didn't want it to feel confrontational. So when he brings it up, we follow his lead. Can you talk a little bit? You mentioned the taxi story, and I'm just curious, how that started. Can you just start that from the beginning?
Well, that happened right after the Schofield.
We want to ask more about Michelle, but for now, we keep Jeremy talking about the cab driver.
I mean, like I said, I broke into a house and stole the gun. I'm scared to death. Got this big gun on me, So
Jeremy mentions the same details he'd revealed in his letters about finding the gun at a cop's house he broke into, an old .357 Magnum. But then he starts getting into more of a narrative, and his story, it fits with the information we already knew about the case.
So when I called the taxi And he took me down there. And I was just gonna rob him. But when I was pointing the gun at him, I guess he just touched it, boom, you know. And it was like midnight. But then I got in a taxi cab, turned the car around. I was kind of speeding, went over the tracks, and I turned, and the car slid, you know, because it's one of them old yellow taxi cab. They got the old engines in it. But then the car kept sliding, you know, and it hit the side of a car. Another car hit that car, and the taxi cab hit the pole, right? And
He runs his fingers across the table, drawing the streets of Intercession City. And he uses his hands to show us the route the taxicab traveled before it crashed. Jeremy's hastily drawn tabletop map matches what we've been able to piece together. But the most striking parts aren't the details Jeremy's describing here. It's the way he's telling it, shifting in his seat to mimic the feel of the car as it slides into a crash. He's moving his body as though he's reliving it. It feels like we're in the car with him. I can't imagine a lie being so embodied. Jeremy explains how, after he hits the pole, he jumps out of the taxi and sees a group of people moving toward him to see if anyone is hurt.
But I yelled out, I got out the car, I said, y'all run, it's finna blow, right? And everybody just took off running. I didn't want to see my face. So that's how I took off.
When you crashed the cab, you thought it might blow up?
Yeah, it hit the light pole. And the light pole was just like sparking. You know, and nobody wants to take a chance.
This all matches what we know about the case. Witnesses told the same story. One of the things we wanted to know more about is that black hat found in the taxi cab, the one with the skull and the Confederate flag that was left on the back seat. But we don't even have to bring it up.
I have a hat. It belonged to my cousin, Jason Scott. Right, he's dead now, right? But it had his name in it, right? And I left it in the car. I gave him that kind of much evidence, and I said, why would anything in my family be in that car? Going straight up about it.
Jeremy seems shocked he never got caught. After killing the cab driver and crashing the cab, he runs off into the woods, and he says he hid out in an empty house in Intercession City. He laid there for hours, under a blanket, just waiting for the police dogs to come and sniff him out.
I know that sooner or later it's going to come back on me. You know, I just wait for it. It's a matter of time.
But the dogs and the deputies, they never come. Nothing comes back on him. And it's unclear if it ever will. Jeremy has now given a full confession to the murder of Joseph LaVere, a confession to a 35-year-old cold case. It's a remarkable moment, but given everything we've been through, everything we've seen, not a terribly surprising one. He'd already spontaneously confessed to his girlfriend, Jamie Nellums, more than 3 decades ago. And his brother, Royal Dean, seemed to be aware of it too. Jeremy had casually brought it up to 2 investigators from the state, as though he was trying to see what they knew. But the investigators laughed him off. And in a letter he'd written to me, Jeremy had revealed some seriously incriminating information about the murder. We'd taken this evidence to the 9th Circuit State Attorney's Office and the Osceola County Sheriff's Office more than once. Even before this full confession, I thought for sure we'd collected enough to convince someone in power to look into the physical evidence collected from the crime scene. I mean, during the original investigation of the murder, fingerprints were lifted from the taxicab and hair was plucked from the seats. The fingerprints and the hair could match to Jeremy. But the sheriff's office never got back to us about whether or not they'd test the evidence or if it still exists. Whether the state will do anything to officially close this case, clearing Dan Odie's name and bringing closure to the family of Joseph LaVere, that's yet to be seen. And in the meantime, here's Jeremy freely admitting to the unsolved murder. He's coming clean. But if nothing comes of it, it won't be the first time in Jeremy's life that his efforts to tell the truth were disregarded by the state of Florida.
For a few minutes, I just want to talk about John Aguero. Part of our investigation is into some of the things that we think.
I wanted to ask Jeremy about the meeting he'd had with the prosecutor in 2005. That was the meeting that motivated John Aguero to close the investigation into Jeremy for the murder of Michelle Schofield. During that meeting, Jeremy was brought from state prison into John Aguero's office. There were no witnesses present, and Aguero did not record the meeting. So we only have John Aguero's account, the one he testified to at Leo's evidentiary hearing in 2010. Now, I want to hear Jeremy's side of the story.
What kind of things was Aguero telling you when they said, "Oh, we found your fingerprints in this car"? How did that come out?
He said, what was you doing with the car? I said, I break in cars. I mean, it ain't no secret what I do on the streets, you know. I'm telling basically everything what I tell everybody else. And what I couldn't use, I threw in the trash. You know, cleaned the car out the best I could. You know, that's why I said, I was surprised when they said it pump rent on the windshield. But that's when I jerked that stereo out of there.
Jeremy, do you remember anything about John Aguero offering you immunity?
He offered to sit on my hearing. He said, well, he has a lot of influence. Pro hearing coming, it never happens.
But he didn't mention immunity? Like, he didn't say, if you confess right now to killing Michelle, we won't charge you. You have immunity. He never said anything like that.
No, he won't do that. He won't do that.
So you didn't ever hear him say that you have immunity? Mm-hmm. Okay.
All he said was, I'm going to be sitting on your hearing. He said, what I say on that hearing goes a long ways. And he said, it's your freedom. And that's enough for me.
We asked Jeremy about immunity 3 times because we want to be sure he understands. This is an important point. The state has relied on this story about John Aguero's offer of immunity so heavily to prove that Jeremy is just a car stereo thief and not a murderer. Because, they reason, if Jeremy really killed Michelle Schofield, he certainly would have said so when offered immunity. But we're not sure that Jeremy understands what immunity is. And he has no recollection of any such offer from Aguero. Again, we've tried, and Leo's lawyers have tried, to request documentation for this alleged immunity offer. But the state has never produced anything. Jeremy remembers John Aguero offering a different kind of help. That if Jeremy stuck to his stereo theft story, Aguero would help him with his parole. But that's not all Jeremy says happened in John Aguero's office.
Did he ever ask you about Michelle? Like, did he ask you if you were
He asked me that I killed him. I told him I killed him.
You said you had...
I told him.
In the office when he was asking about the fingerprints?
That's where I told him at. When I told him straight up, I told him I had something to do with it. And he still didn't believe me.
And he wasn't recording you or anything?
Mm-mm. It was just me and him in the office station. Just me and him.
Jeremy says that in that same meeting, Aguero showed him aerial photos of the canal. And even though Michelle's body can't be seen from that high above, Jeremy says he pointed to the exact spot in the photo where her body was found.
They showed me some pictures, the case of Michelle. I had to point out areas to him where the body was at, you know, because where the body was at, the only person who put it there is the person that put it there. And I stressed that because I seen the helicopter pictures from above, and I'm looking at them. I mean, he had them all laid out. There's no way you can't describe nobody in that lake. And I pointed it out to him. That's how I know it.
Jeremy Scott claims he confessed to the murder of Michelle Schofield to Assistant State Attorney John Aguero in 2005 when he was confronted with the fingerprint evidence. And according to Jeremy, Aguero told him he didn't want to hear it.
But you're very insistent. Aguero knew about this all along.
He knew it. He knew it was going to fall out like this. He knew everything. But he didn't care. But when I brought something up to him, he didn't want to hear that.
We can never know whether this conversation actually happened or not because John Aguero didn't record the meeting, and Aguero is no longer alive. So what was John Aguero hoping to accomplish in that room alone with Jeremy? Why would a prosecutor go into a room with someone like Jeremy Scott without a witness and without a tape recorder, unless, for some reason, he doesn't want to create a record of that conversation?
Why do you think the state will not believe your confession?
I don't think it ain't that they don't believe me. They don't want to bring all that back out undercover. Because I think there probably is more stuff that buried underneath that Guerrero stuff, and they just ain't never went looking. Because if you have to open some of them cases, that means you have to really investigate the prosecutor. And that's something he needs to be doing. Prosecutor's gonna do what they got to do. And it's like they knew that they knew when they brought me in that day. They knew I had something to do with that, but like they ain't got time to go through all these paperwork again. They just trying to cover it up because all it is going to open more doors, and it's going to open more doors.
For where I was sitting, I could see him doing a lot of fidgeting, and when the conversation got a little more difficult, he would definitely start scratching his arms and his hands. And at one point I looked and I saw it, his fingers were sort of facing me, and I remembered he had hate, H-A-T-E, across his knuckles. And you could see him sort of scratching that.
Well, I just reminded Gilbert that he has love on the other hand. And, we'd seen that before on documents that he had these tattoos. And I think there are a couple times where hate is maybe the only tattoo mentioned, but, he does have love on the other hand.
Your sort of letter started out saying you came back to Perry in Christmas '86, and
I stayed there till January. I left. I started walking back towards Polk County. That's where I hang out at. I went back down there around February. That was about the time it starts pouring down rain, and that's when I ran into Michelle. It was February. It was raining that night, but that's where it all began at.
Could you tell us that story?
That's not a good story to talk about.
No, it's not. And you know what? Your detail in the letter was really very detailed, and you talked about the gas station, and we just figured to hear it in your words.
Yeah. This is a case that should never happen. It was just one of them out of fluke things, out of air. Raining, starving, no place to sleep.
Then we started kind of getting into the Michelle stuff. And as soon as that happened, they have their cloth face masks that are made out of the same material as their prison uniforms. So he had his face mask in his hand and he started folding it, wrapping the strings. And I could just tell he was starting to get anxious. He knew, the kind of stuff we were going to be asking about.
So you were walking down like Cumbie Road and you come into this gas station and
Yeah, I was sitting there at the bar. She was on the phone talking to somebody. And when she got off, she asked, I needed a phone. I said, no. She said, why you all, because it's raining, I said, I ain't got no ride, So she gave me a ride.
You said in one of your letters that she was nice to you.
She was nice, gave me a ride and all that. That's where it hurts me more. Girls like that don't pick up people.
Why do you think she picked you up? Were you a stranger to her, or?
I don't think I was, apparently, because she wasn't to pick up anybody. That's what's been bothering me. Apparently, we know each other for, glance or been at a party or something, or a school or whatever. I don't.
What did you tell? Did you tell her you want to take you somewhere, or how did you describe it?
I asked her to take me down to North Cumbie.
Did you guys talk about anything in the car as you're riding? No,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of quiet? Because it was a short ride to where you were going?
Short ride.
So what happens when you take her back into that area?
I first apologized to her, but she went screaming and panicking and stuff. And that's when I guess I lost it then.
Was she saying anything to you, or just?
No, she just screamed, and that was it. She ain't said never a word.
You mentioned that she was hitting you.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Trying, because she's in the driver's seat, right? She was just like that.
Not enough to really hurt you, but.
No.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is, and you wrote in one of your letters that at one point she tried to drive away.
Well, I think that's what really put the car in heat.
Really?
Yeah, because when she did, I reached around and grabbed the shit and put it in park. And that was the last of that. But.
So when you say you lost it, what do you mean by that?
I mean, went psych. I'm not a very good person when it's in the psych department. I got a history.
From where I was sitting, I could see that his whole arm was just scar tissue. He had so many, probably like hundreds of cut marks on his arms, which is something we knew that, he had that and that was something he did. But, sitting there, I was trying not to stare. You said you apologized to her?
Huh?
You said you apologized to,
to
Michelle?
Yeah, I did.
What did you apologize for?
And for what I'm doing.
What were you doing?
Still was going to steal the car, but then when she went on that mood stuff, man, I really got panic. And that's when I had that knife. It's just like it's a hunting knife. They come in twins. They belong to my uncle's kids. I took one of them, but I didn't think anything would do that much damage because they knew they ain't been sharpened. Yeah. They just got an edge. That's it. It happens so fast. Yeah. Because once it happened, it just happened so fast.
He doesn't get into the stabbing that much. He just says, I don't know how many times I stabbed her, I lost it, and he just doesn't want to talk about it. And I think it's trauma. I just think that he's finding some self-defense mechanism to sort of block out the worst parts of his memory, because you could tell how upsetting they were to him. And that was kind of surprising to me, like this hardened, killer who's been in prison, who's seen the worst violence of anybody I'll ever meet. And, he was emotional, and he was definitely getting upset. And I almost felt like we had a responsibility to sort of protect him, to not go too far.
he'd also gotten agitated in the past when people have tried to press him to get more into that. And I didn't want to, upset him and lose our chance to talk to him further.
Well, I dragged her out the car, put her on there was like a plastic wrap around thing down by the creek. So I wrapped in up in that, slid down by the creek, and put a plyboard box over it so it couldn't be seen.
Jeremy says that after wrapping Michelle in plastic, he dragged her body into the water, then took the Mazda.
So I got in the car and I went trying to go up on I-4. And I got halfway and it stalled up on me.
So when you went on I-4, where were you headed?
My family, I got family living there in Kissimmee. So I do a lot of walking between Kissimmee and Polk County. Mm.
But then the car stalled out. Was it like smoking or making noise?
No, it's just stalled out. Like, when you're running the engine too much and zoom.
So Michelle's car just stopped running. And Jeremy says the detectives must not have looked closely at the car on the side of I-4. Because, he says, if they had, they would have asked the questions that Kelsey and I had been asking ourselves. Questions the state never bothered with.
Why was the car parked there? Why? That's all it was stalled. Because putting too much gas on it, trying to move it, and it stalled out. That's why the car still stayed there.
When you were driving and the car broke down, you mentioned something about finding a towel and using that to wipe it down.
Everything that I used that was tossed in the bag, that was thrown in the trash can. So, but they still should have found a lot of evidence. They should have found all that instead of just a fingerprint. What about my shoe print and the gas pump? What about the steering wheel, the seats? So they didn't do the proper job.
Here we are, inside a prison, interviewing the man who is claiming responsibility for Michelle Schofield's murder. And he's listing all the ways the state of Florida failed to investigate his crime. I think about the evidence that was found, but was never tested. The hairs found on the car and on Michelle's body, and the scrapings from beneath her fingernails. But by the time Jeremy was linked to the Mazda, much of the untested evidence had been destroyed or degraded. And at the same time, Jeremy says he did make an attempt to clean up.
It is interesting what you're saying because they never found any of the Schofield prints in the car. They weren't there. So it sort of fits that you wiped it down. Were you pretty careful about that, or?
Yeah, that particular night there. Because I'm on probation.
Right.
So I had to be careful.
We've gone through Leo's story from the night Michelle went missing, and the state's version that was presented to the jury. But now, we're able to piece together Jeremy's story through what he's telling us, what he's written to us through letters, and what he's told Leo's lawyers in the past. It's the night of February 24th, 1987. Jeremy comes upon a young woman using the payphone at a gas station on Cumbie Road. He'd been drinking Thunderbird wine that night, and he admits that wine makes him violent. It's drizzling out, and he's broke, and the young woman sees him standing there. She says, "I know you." Jeremy doesn't recognize her, but it's Michelle Schofield. He says he's not good with faces, and he guesses she must remember him from a party or something. When she asks if he needs the phone, he says no. He needs a ride just up Cumbie Road. Jeremy gets in the passenger seat of the Mazda and gives Michelle directions. He asks her to take him to a trailer park on North Cumbie Road, but they drive past it. Instead, he directs her a little further onto State Road 33, then has her turn right onto a dirt road through a cut in the tree line. There are no houses back here, Michelle tells him. Jeremy makes some kind of comment. This is where people come to make out at. He's thinking maybe he can get laid. But Michelle tells him she's married. Jeremy fumbles in his jacket pocket. He says he reaches for his cigarettes, but his knife falls out. He must have threatened her. Whether it was to steal her car or to rape her, it's unclear. But Jeremy says Michelle sees the knife and panics. She tries to drive away, but he slams the car into park. She starts hitting him, and that's when Jeremy says he lost it, and he attacked her. For whatever reason, Jeremy either can't or won't elaborate on the actual act itself. He says he doesn't remember how many times he stabbed her. He also says the stabbing took place in the car. But listening to him tell it, I got the sense that the stabbing began in the car. Michelle managed to open the door, and Jeremy says she fell out onto the dirt where her blood was found. I killed her, he says, and he leaves it at that. Jeremy says that after the attack, he wrapped Michelle up in some plastic he found nearby and dragged her down to the canal. Then he put a piece of plywood on top of her to protect her from the snakes and gators, he says. He then gets back in the car and sees $10 in the center console, which he pockets. He smokes a cigarette, then takes off in the Mazda. He drives about half a mile north and merges onto I-4. He gets 6 or so miles east when the Mazda stalls out, and he's forced to pull over. Once the car grinds to a stop, Jeremy grabs something, like a towel, he says, and he starts wiping the car down to remove his fingerprints. There's a gas station off the exit ramp at the top of the hill, so Jeremy heads there with the towel and the knife. It's late, and the gas station is closed, but he sees a dumpster and buries the knife and the towel in the trash. He crosses the highway to hitchhike back to Lakeland, but when he sees the Mazda again, he decides to steal the stereo. He can't pry it out, so he steals the equalizer mounted to the dash below it, and he takes the speakers from the back. He makes it back to Lakeland somehow and falls asleep in an abandoned trailer. There are several parts of Jeremy's story that stand out to me because they match other evidence I've seen or pieced together. At times, he offers an explanation for things the state never even attempted to explain. For one, the state never presented a theory about why the car was found on the eastbound side of I-4, miles outside of Lakeland. But Jeremy does. After killing Michelle, he says he was headed toward Kissimmee, where he had family. That's the direction the Mazda was heading. That's also the direction he would drive the following year, in 1988, when he went to his mom's trailer after killing Donald Moorhead and stealing his Chevy Beretta. The state doesn't dwell on the Mazda's condition or location. It's Jeremy who accounts for this and describes what it felt like driving the vehicle as it broke down. And then there's the evidence Jeremy left in the car. One of his fingerprints was lifted from inside of the driver's side window. Another fingerprint was found in the back of the vehicle, where the speakers were. It was on a receipt near the Downy bottle that was smeared with Michelle's blood. I've spent so much time studying the photos taken from the crime scene. I've tried to piece together the events based on the location of the bloodstains, the drag marks in the dirt, and the location of Michelle's body. Michelle's blood is pooled in the dirt. The stains are where the driver's side of the Mazda would be if it turned onto the narrow dirt road beside the canal, so the location of the bloodstains are consistent with Jeremy's telling that after he stabbed her, she opened the door and fell out of the car. I think Jeremy then got out of the car, came around to her side, and continued to stab her in that spot. I think that's where she was killed. That's where most of her blood was found. There are drag marks leading from the bloodstains to the canal, and coins, a quarter, a nickel, and a penny, in the dirt alongside the path of the drag marks. They must have fallen from Michelle's pockets while Jeremy was dragging her. Jeremy says he wrapped Michelle's body in plastic. Police never collected any plastic from the scene. But if you look at the crime scene photos, you can see several plastic tarps, just like Jeremy describes, right there among the garbage. But they weren't taken into evidence. If Jeremy's telling the truth, one of those plastic sheets may have had Michelle's blood on it, or Jeremy's fingerprints. And there's another thing in those police photos that caught my eye. A pack of Marlboro cigarettes.
Were you smoking too? You said something about going in the car to smoke.
Yeah, I smoked cigarettes back then.
What kind of cigarettes did you smoke?
Marlboros.
Okay.
This pack of Marlboros wasn't far from the bloodstains and the drag marks. And again, it was photographed like evidence. But it was never taken in, never processed for fingerprints. Why did police photograph this pack of Marlboros but not collect it? There's one other thing that I've been hung up on these past 3 years. No one, none of Michelle's family, none of her friends or coworkers, ever claimed to have seen her or spoken with her in the hours following that final 9:45 p.m. phone call that she made to Leo from the payphone at Sparky's gas station. If Leo supposedly killed Michelle in a fit of rage right after his 12:43 a.m. phone call to the Polk County Sheriff's Office, where was Michelle during those 3 hours after she called Leo? She said she'd be right over, but she never showed. So who was she with? What was she doing? The state could not produce a single witness to answer these questions about Michelle's whereabouts. After hearing Jeremy's version of events, the answer seems pretty obvious to me. Michelle never made it to Leo that night because she ran into Jeremy Scott. He approached her at the payphone, and then, minutes later, she was dead. That's why no one else can claim they heard from her or saw her within those 3 hours. Jeremy Scott was the last person to see Michelle Schofield alive.
What was going through your mind after you did all this and you took the car? Where were you thinking, like, I'm going to just drive back to Kissimmee, or?
I'll be honest with you, that's my whole point. I wasn't thinking. Because if I was, I would have never even done what I did. That's something that should never happen. It wasn't planned. That shouldn't never happen. I should have swallowed my pride and went to Salvation Army. But everybody was, February, it's raining. I wasn't a whole lot I could think about it. I mean, back then, when you're young, you don't be thinking. That's the thing. Until it's over with. Then reality hits you. Then years go by, and that's when the reality really hits you. Yeah. Because you have to live with this every day.
Can you describe that? What is it like to live with it?
It's not a good feeling, put it this way. Just put it this way. I dream, I wake up, I turn over, I see a dead body sleeping next to me. I sleep with dead bodies every night when I go to bed. That's my punishment. That shit gets me so scared. I sleep with it every night. Trust me, it's not a good sight.
Is that part of the reason that you're talking to us, but you're just thinking about these things?
It's been wanting to come out though. You know, it's just a matter of time, because if I don't say it now, it's not guaranteed I'm gonna walk down that sidewalk and walk out getting stabbed up. You know, because you don't know what's gonna happen out here. You know. Somebody might put a hit on you.
And it feels important to you to talk about it?
It does. I mean, it ain't gonna change. I mean, it can change. It ain't gonna change nothing for me, but it can change something for her. You know, she ain't here, but for her family, though.
You know, one of the things we did want to ask is just if you ever think about Michelle now.
I do all the time. I pray for her every night. I told you when I lay down, I sleep with her. Can't get out, can't get away. That's a nightmare.
What do you pray about?
I pray for a lot of things. Bad spirits. I mess with the spirits too much. But now, as far as Michelle, she was just at the wrong time, wrong place. Everything happens when you're young and not thinking. She deserves better than that. And she'll get it. I think once this gets cleared up, she can rest. But as far as Leo, I only speak for this case. Yeah, Leo innocent. Of all things, he's innocent on this one. I've been trying to help him. I'm doing everything I could. I'm trying to help you out, but they don't want me to help him out. Man has been in prison 33 years. He needs to be out. You know, that man ain't do nothing. He's innocent.
We sat down with Leo before we interviewed Jeremy. He has a copy of one of the letters Jeremy wrote to me. It meant more to Leo than I could have known. Leo now carries it around with him, folded up and tucked into the pocket of his blue prison uniform.
You know that I received a letter from Jeremy a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I carry it around in my pocket every day, except today they don't let me bring anything here.
What did you think of it?
Well, obviously, I believe that he's the murderer of my wife. I believe he's also been trying to say that for a long time.
The letter that Leo carries with him is one of the first letters I received from Jeremy. It says, in part, "Dear Mr. King, I don't know what it is that you want to know about Polk County prosecutors. They lied. That's why I told the whole truth about Leo Schofield. And I had also told them things that a killer would know. Leo didn't kill his wife. I did."
I read those words, Leo didn't kill his wife, I did. Very simple verb. When I first read it, I'm not kidding, I had chills, and I get chills every time I do it because he's nothing like I was expecting. He's not the three-headed monster that had to have done something like this to someone as wonderful and beautiful as Michelle was. You have to be a monster to do that. And he's not. He's just a pathetic human being that's been messed up. You know, he's had a really rough go, as I'm sure you're aware of now, even in the prison. And I do believe he's sorry. But it just shows you that he has a heart. He does have a heart. You know, that he's not a monster. He's not what I was looking for. You know, I've always wanted the truth, and I thank him for the truth. We both, in different worlds, needed redemption over the same issue. You know, when I look in the mirror, I got to look at the man who let his wife get murdered. You know, and at some point, I needed redemption. I needed to be rebuilt into something that I could live with. You know, and I see Jeremy in that same light. You know, in a different frame, a different storyline. You know, he's the one who put all this into play. You know, he's the man holding the knife, and so he needs his own redemption. You know, and you know what? I thank God for that. I thank God for that, because without that, I don't think we ever get to the bottom of it. And very few people know the truth. You know, now there's a bigger story to tell. You know, and where it goes from here, we'll see.
It's been more than 3 years since Judge Scott Cupp first handed me his business card. 3 years since I first read the words he'd written on the back. Leo Schofield, not just wrongfully convicted, he's an innocent man. In the time since, Kelsey and I have spent 20-plus hours sitting across a table from Leo in a cinder-block prison room, listening to him talk about the moments of his adolescence that came to define his entire life. I have dozens of letters and emails from him, and we talk regularly on the phone. And I'm in constant touch with his family. Leo's daughter Ashley is now a mother with 2 baby boys. Today, Leo's grandsons visit him on that same patch of grass outside the visitation pavilion, where he says he raised Ashley. Even the guards at Hardy, who know Chrissy and Ashley and the boys, they tell us they don't want to see Leo's grandsons grow up visiting the prison. They know Leo needs to be home. When Leo had opportunities to have his case reviewed in court, I shared in his hope for justice. And when those opportunities were denied, I shared in the heartbreak. With no realistic legal options left to pursue, Leo's waiting on his next parole hearing, where once again, Leo will refuse to apologize for a crime he did not commit. And once again, the state will argue against his parole because of this. So he's waiting on parole, and he's waiting on this story to come out. I'm acutely aware of the hope this project has given Leo and his family. It's conflicting. I believe in his story, and I'm honored to be able to tell it. But I also know that there are no guarantees it'll make any difference in Leo's life. I wish I could make those promises, but I know I can't.
I don't even want to say thank you anymore, Gilbert. I can't.
You don't have to say any of that stuff.
Well, yeah, but it's my heart.
No, we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe in this stuff.
Gilbert, I wouldn't be here if you didn't believe in this stuff. I would not be here if you did not believe in this stuff. And I am dead serious about that, because I am tired. I am tired. I don't carry just my hurt. I carry the hurt of my family. I carry a ton of hurt of the men that I serve here. I mean, every single one of them come to me every day. When are you getting out of here? You know what I mean? And I carry a lot, and it's heavy. It's friggin' heavy. And sometimes I get hopeless. Sometimes I feel like it's getting so far away, and I'm going in the wrong direction. And it's just a feeling. I'm not saying that it is. You know, and this confession just... It's like, how many times do I got to hear it? How many times does he have to say it?
I get it, but we're putting this story together, and I think...
I just don't want you to underplay your part.
No.
No, you can't. My life depended on it. You gave me the hope, Gilbert. That's the truth.
I'm
You gave me the
terrified of
hope.
that, Leo, because I know Scott felt like he gave you hope one time.
And he
It
did.
breaks his heart
And he did.
every
Yeah,
day.
but you know what? It's the relationship that I have with him that sustains me even now. I love that man. He's a brother to me. I love that man. And I'm not going to let him down, and I'm not going to let you down. And I'm sustained that way. So it doesn't matter what happens. It matters that people have bonded. You know, we've become a family of sorts. That matters. That matters. It counts because it's all I got.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And you know what? It's all I need. That's all I need.
Leo is trying to reassure me that he's going to be okay, regardless of what happens after the story comes out. Because after 35 years, he knows better than to hope for anything more from the state of Florida. In October of 2021, Leo was going to be playing a concert one afternoon at Hardy with his band, The Watchers. We couldn't get permission to record, but I decided to fly down for the concert anyway, knowing what it would mean to Leo to have me there. I just wanted to see him with his bandmates and the men in his congregation, his brothers. The assistant warden meets me at security and escorts me to the God Behind Bars building. As we're walking, I see a flyer posted to a wall announcing the concert. The Watchers, it reads, with special guest Gilbert King. Once I get inside, I see Leo surrounded by his brothers. They're all in their prison blue uniforms with white stripes down the pants. He comes over, we hug, and he introduces me to his bandmates. They all tell me they've been passing around the same taped-up copy of my book, Devil in the Grove. It's a book I sent to Leo more than 3 years ago. They all thank me for looking into Leo's case. Inside this building, the inmates move around freely, joking and drinking coffee. There are very few guards. You get the sense that nobody's really worried about the men here, who continue to file in for the concert. Before the Watchers take the stage, Leo says he wants to show me something. So he leads me and the assistant warden through the library to a door in the back. It's the war room, that small gray room tacked with prayer requests, the place where Leo came in his darkest of times to pray for Jeremy Scott, trying to forgive him. Leo steps inside and gets noticeably choked up. He knows I'm aware of the story, that in 2016, just a few days after tacking up his prayer request for Jeremy Scott, Leo received the news that Jeremy confessed to killing Michelle. But the assistant warden is new, and as Leo begins to explain the significance of this room to him, he catches himself, realizing this story is too long and complicated for a stranger to absorb. So he just tells us that the inmates are lucky to have a place and a program like this at Hardy, and the assistant warden seems pleased to hear it. As we move toward the stage, I meet Leo's longtime friend, cellmate, and songwriting partner, Kevin Herrick. Leo taught him to play guitar more than 20 years ago when Kevin first came to Hardy. Kevin also tells me Leo taught him how to be a man, and a man of God, he says. Leo takes the stage and picks up the mic to rousing applause. There's a full drum set and a keyboard and amps ready to go. Leo's got reading glasses on, and he's carrying a leather-bound Bible in his hands. He tells the crowd that it's not God's plan for them to be destroyed in this prison, and he begins a sermon on self-worth and dignity. Then Leo points to me in the audience. "You might not look it, but this man is a friggin' bulldog," he says. And then he tells the story about how Judge Scott Cupp handed me a business card with Leo's name on it, and how Kelsey and I have been investigating his case for years. I stand up, not expecting this, and say something about storytelling and how honored I feel to be invited to share this time with them before giving the mic back to Leo. Leo's glasses come off, and the music begins. Inmates clap and sing along with hands outstretched. Some of these men have been here for decades. Men who mentored Leo when he first arrived in the system. They're dancing. Leo's boss for maintenance is here. Even the guards are clapping and moving to the music.
Do you hear my madness? Laughter hides my fear. Sorrow's depths are endless in this valley of tears.
The lyrics may be spiritual, but the sound is pure 1980s rock. Leo and Kevin are trading solos, shredding their two guitars, dueling it out. Leo's working up a sweat, leaning on Kevin's shoulder. The two men are laughing and nodding encouragement at each other. It's not hard for me to imagine Leo, the teenager, with long black hair, his shirt off, standing on some flatbed truck in the woods in Polk County playing for free beer with his old band Rhino. Michelle is there too. She's dancing by the bonfire, cheering on the band. Maybe, I imagine, they'd have made it to the Lakeland Civic Center someday to open for Iron Maiden or Def Leppard. But that life and those dreams disappeared 35 years ago on a cold, damp night in February of 1987 when Jeremy Scott took Michelle's life and the state of Florida took Leo's freedom. After the show, I left the prison and I had a few hours to kill before getting to the airport in Orlando. So I took the back roads for one more drive through Bone Valley. The sun was beginning to set on the phosphate capital of the world, casting a golden hue on the towering gypsum stacks in the distant horizon. I went past Tom's restaurant, where Michelle worked, and the gas station on Cumbie Road, where she spoke her very last words to Leo over an old payphone. I went by the trailer park right up the road, where Jeremy used to stay with his grandmother. Then onto State Road 33, passing that drainage canal hidden behind palmetto bushes. I turned onto I-4 and passed the exit ramp where Michelle's Mazda broke down, and the gas station on the hill, where a cheap knife with a compass on the handle once lay buried in a dumpster, never to be found. I wanted one more look at all the places in Bone Valley, the places Kelsey and I have visited and revisited and thought about every day for the past 3 years. Places that are still seared into Leo's mind 35 years later. For now, this is where the story has to end. Leo Schofield and Jeremy Scott have settled on the truth of what happened on that February night back in 1987. There's nothing more to say. Unless the state of Florida decides to write the final chapter, this may be the closest Leo Schofield ever gets to true justice. For himself and for Michelle.
Do you hear my madness? Laughter hides my fears. Sorrow's depths are endless in this valley of tears. I wanna see your revelation. I wanna know who you are. I'm reaching out in desperation to the one who's holding the stars. To the one who's holding the stars. To the one who's holding the stars.
Bone Valley is a production of Lava for Good podcast in association with Signal Company No. 1. Our executive producers are Jason Flom and Kevin Wirtis. Kara Kornhaber is our senior producer. Britt Spangler is our sound designer. Roxandra Guidi is our editor. Fact-checking by Maximo Anderson. Our producer and researcher is Kelsey Decker. The One Who's Holding the Stars is performed by Lee Bob and the Truth. It was written by Leo Schofield and Kevin Herrick and was performed during this episode by the Watchers at Florida's Hardy Correctional Institution. Bone Valley is written and produced by me, Gilbert King. You can follow the show on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Lava for Good. To see photos and documents from our investigation and exclusive behind-the-scenes content, visit lavaforgood.com/Bone Valley.